Hey everyone, I'm so excited that we're going to be having our first interview today on the podcast, and I'm really excited to welcome Emilia Zeeland on as our first guest. So, Emilia Zeeland is a young adult sci fi and fantasy writer and author of the Star Academy series and the Elmwick Academy series. Her stories include coming of age tales, detailed worlds, unimaginable consequences, deep friendships, and romances that sneak up on you. She's not afraid to push her characters to their limits and give them a depth that firmly plants them in readers' hearts. In Zealand's writing, readers will be transported to another world where they are not alone, but part of a tightly knit found family. So, welcome, Emilia.
Hi, yay. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on your podcast.
Thank you for coming. I just got to let our listeners know that you were the first person I told about this podcast idea. And you were so encouraging of me starting it. And I know at the time I told you I wasn't ready, but now here we are, we're doing it. And I couldn't think of anyone more fitting to have on as my first guest. So thank you so
Oh
much.
my God. No, thank you. And I'm really happy that, that encouragement has actually, led to something because that's lovely to know that actually it was helping you to, yeah, to come up with this idea and pursue it. So I think you're going to do great. And I can't wait to see where this podcast takes you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It was really encouraging to hear from someone else because, like, I was just having this idea in my head, just like I don't know if anyone would like it, but everything you said was like good points, and so yeah, it was really encouraging. So, all right.
Yay. I'm so happy.
All right, so let's just dive right into the interview. Let's get to know you a little bit. So tell us just your author journey. I know that's a really broad question, but just start wherever you like from the beginning, like when you started writing to where you are now. Go in as much or as little detail as you want.
Okay, how much time do we have again? No, I'm kidding you. But I will allow myself to go into a little bit more detail than I would in like a written blog article interview or something like that, just because I think this kind of friendly format lends itself
Yeah.
to something like this. And I guess that's the point with the interview as well. I'm actually going to talk about something that I'm not very vocal about. I got started on Wattpad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was 2012. Yeah, it was
Oh, wow.
2012.
That was a while ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, and I discovered Wattpad. And I had actually tried to write a little bit on my Star Academy. I think I had like one or two chapters. Probably hadn't even finished the second chapter, and I gave up just because I felt like I knew nothing about writing. I didn't know kind of how to organize my thoughts. I was a lot younger as well, so I think I just didn't have the experience of managing, a project of that magnitude. And yeah, and it was just sitting there like a few pages on a Word document in my computer, and I was just daydreaming about the story. But I wasn't doing anything with it, and I thought it was never going to amount to anything. But then I discovered Wattpad, and I saw kind of the social media aspect of it. Like you support other writers, you read each other's work chapter by chapter, so you post it as you write it. You don't need to have a full book, and that really freed me up because it allowed me to focus on a little bit at a time and not think about, oh, I need to write an entire book and how overwhelming that is, right? So I just focused on, oh, I need to tell people what happens next. I need to tell them what happens when she gets to the space station. I need to tell them what happens when she does this. And I would just tell the story bit by bit, and people would start reading it. I wasn't like mega successful, like the Jenny Han books or anything like that got started on Wattpad. But I was getting about 50 to 70 likes by the end of it, like by
Oh, wow.
2016.
That's
I was
amazing.
getting, yeah, it was amazing because you get it also immediately after you post. So basically, between 2012 and 2016, I was just writing on Wattpad chapter by chapter. And I did The Unsound Theory, my first book, and The Truth Hunters, my second book. They were completely finished all Wattpad. chapter by chapter, and it was just so nice because you get like inline comments. You knew if your joke had worked out because like 20 people would comment on the same space and be like, oh my god, this is hilarious, or something like this. So I don't know, it was just a very joyful time. And I think I need to kind of remind myself of how my writing journey started more often, because I wasn't taking it professionally, but I was actually having a lot of fun with it. It was definitely my hobby for those years to write. And I did that whenever I had time off, which I don't do currently. So, sometimes you have to go back to your basics. And then actually, what made me go into self publishing was the fact that after my second book, I realized I had written myself into a couple of corners. My first two books needed to be completely rewritten in order to make
Oh.
anything work in the third book. So I took them down and I basically did a very, very huge developmental edits. So, developmental edits, for those of you who might not know, is the edit where you look at what happens, the characterization, the world, the actual stakes, the actual twists in the books, like everything, like the plot is also up for change. So it's not just polishing sentences. And I basically scrapped more than 50% of those books and rewrote. Yeah,
Oh my
I
goodness.
rewrote.
Oh, I can't imagine just that big edit process.
It was crazy. It was really crazy. It took a lot of iterations. I had to replot it, which is, where I also have some plotting experience from, is because I had to do those big changes. And, it's actually not as painful as it sounds because you're making it so much better. That's why I'm such a cheerleader for doing big edits and like changing things a lot, like on after you edit, because I really feel like this is where I took my books from, oh yeah, something that somebody wrote when they had their free time, to an actual like finished product that was really well thought out and had all of the details in the right place and so on. And then once all of that was finished, I had also learned a bit more about self-publishing, and I just decided to give it a go because I don't know, I was really proud of this finished product that I had now, and I really wanted to just put it out there for kind of on its own and not just as part of a more of a social media site, which is what Wattpad is, right?
Gotcha. I was wondering, so because you started on Wattpad and you took down those two books, how did your audience react to when you took them down?
I was actually really afraid that people would be very mad for, the changes that they're happening. But honestly, I did not receive any, huge messages of disappointment. People were pretty happy that I'm taking this to the next level and I'm going to continue on the series. I think Wattpad readers are mostly worried about the story not being written until the end.
Mm.
So the moment I decided to self-publish, it was like a huge vote of confidence. I told them like I'm going to invest even more into like polishing, changing this series and finishing it. And it's really interesting on my comments. I think especially on the first and on the last book, there are some of my comments or reviews on Amazon that mention having started on Wattpad and
Oh,
then having
cool.
tracked my book down years later to see how the story ends. And I was just, yeah, I'm always really flattered when I see changes like that. Yeah, when I see reviews like that, sorry. So for me, it's really, yeah, it's amazing to see that people, for them, it matters to have a story finished, right? Like we're all readers. We just want to know what happens at the end. We want to see the journey. And if this is the best and most professional way for the story to be told, then yeah, I'm sure that people supported that, and it seems by the reviews that they did support it. So
That's
yeah.
awesome. I'm so glad you got that support. And do you still have readers to this day who started like following you from Wattpad?
Yeah, I do. I do. I do also have some reviewers from Wattpad, and I have some author friends as well.
Oh,
So yeah,
cool.
it's very amazing. Some more candidates for your interviews if you want.
I would love that. That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's an amazing community. I definitely think that Wattpad was an amazing place to get started and to just start believing in yourself, mostly in the fact that if you take step by step, you will get to a finished product at some point. So you just need to, yeah, you just need to keep your foot, one foot in front of the other, and keep up with your progress, and then miracles happen, you know.
That's amazing. I love that story. It's really inspiring. And then for
Thank
anyone
you.
who's listening who just is writing as a hobby, Wattpad's a great place, like you said, to go on and be able to share your writing for fun and be able to get that support from a lot of people. So, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
amazing.
think so. I haven't been active on Wattpad for a couple of years. I still have my profile there. I think I have like a sample chapter or two from the updated books, and then the links to Amazon for people to be able to continue reading if they want to. But yeah, I'm not sure how exactly is Wattpad at the moment. What is exactly the
Yeah.
experience? But for me, it was back in those days. It was definitely amazing, and I met some amazing people. So if people want to try it out, why not?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure there's many people out there like offering advice with a more updated version of Wattpad now. But
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, I'm glad you had a good experience with that. So you started out with writing Star Academy, and
Hmm.
then you went on to publish a paranormal type of fantasy, which is Elmwick Academy, and that's the series that I want to talk to you about today. So, give us first a brief pitch on the first book or the series, whichever one you want to do, and then,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm just curious to know just what inspired you to write it.
yeah. Well, basically, Elmwick Academy is kind of my letter of love and nostalgia for all of the paranormal books and TV series of like the early 2010, 2012,
Ah, yeah.
2014, like all of those times. So basically, if you love Teen Wolf, if you love the Vampire Diaries, if you love the originals, if you love reading Vampire Academy, even if you like First Kill, which is a more recent one, but it still has those vibes of back in the day. This is basically, yeah, my love letter to that genre and that time of my life and that hobby that I had, that passion that I had for these small towns with slightly eerie atmosphere and with a lot of supernatural creatures kind of masquerading as humans, and with the different magical systems. And I put my own twist on it. So if you like kind of creatures that you haven't seen yet in those shows that I mentioned, or some creatures that you have seen very, very rarely. For example, like banshees have not participated too much into the stories. And yeah, just different types of witches. In my Elmwick Academy, I kind of have the good witches and the bad witches. So there is like different types of witches, if you can say so. And yeah, that's basically the flavor of the story. The plot itself is about Cami, who is returning to the small town of Elmwick to attend the academy there because her powers, which are the powers in her voice, are completely destructive and she needs to rein them in and learn how to control them. So yeah, basically from there, all sorts of chaos ensues with the different hunters in town, and there is a bit of romance, but everything is very like in that early high school, like maybe even middle grade people might enjoy Elmwick, I feel. So yeah, it's definitely on the younger side of it. So it's not an upper YA, and there is like no spice, nothing like that. So yeah, the story is definitely geared towards teen audiences and has that teen high school academy experience.
I absolutely loved that feel of it. When I read the book, I was like, oh, I love that this just feels like a true YA. Like, I can just
Oh,
totally see teenagers just loving this. And I also really liked how you mentioned that, most of paranormal fantasy that we read has vampires and werewolves, but we rarely see like banshees or like any type of like other shapeshifters. It's just like I like your exploration of other types of creatures, just masquerading as humans. And something else I really like that's in Elmwick, and I want to say it's in Star Academy as well, is that you have these two Academy series, which I'm really curious to know what inspired you to write Academy settings. But you focus, you have an Academy setting, but you focus on a greater plot at stake. Excuse me. you focus on a greater plot at stake. Which, like, for example, like Elmwick, you're engrossed in the plot of the hunters versus the legacies. And
Yeah.
I thought that was just such an interesting point to focus on rather than like the day to day of going to school and what classes you take. You know, it's like that can get a little bit mundane at times, but to know that there's something else that's greater that to focus on, and then plus like the character relationships and the romances, I thought you did a really great job with like balancing all of that out. So anyway, that was something I really enjoyed. But what inspired you to do academy settings?
Mm. Well, first of all, thank you so much. Like, you have no idea how happy this makes me. Well, you're a writer, you know how happy this all makes us when we, I'm sorry, when we receive, feedback like that. Yeah, it matters so much. And that's exactly why I wrote it, is for people to get that like homey nostalgia kind of feeling, of warmth, and just, yeah, feel like the story is so cute and so interesting at the same time. And coming back to your question about the academies, I'm always kidding with people that, yeah, I can't write something that's not an academy. I am going to try with my new series, but more on that later. But for me, an academy is just the perfect setting. So, as you said, it's never the main thing. You will always have a bigger plot, and you will always have things that take your characters, especially in the later books, away from the academy. So, spoiler alert, but the third book in each of my series barely takes place in the academy.
Mm.
So it just, you end up kind of outgrowing that world very naturally. But as a beginning, I think the academy is a perfect setting for exactly these kind of friendships that I like to have, and this multi-group dynamic, with a lot of players at hand, with a lot of different people. You get along with some better than you do with others. Maybe you do some sports together, you do some activities together. You are pushed to collaborate with people that might be your rivals, that might be, people you're in conflict with. And this for me is just so rich. Like, I love the fact that in an academy, just like in the real world, you can't choose to just work with your two best friends and go on an adventure with just the two of them and not care about anyone else. Like, in an
Mm.
academy, you clash with all sorts of people, and that basically enriches you a lot. And you, learning to work with all sorts of different people, even when you don't get along. This is a theme in both series as well. And I think it's a life skill, and it gives you so much comedic relief. It gives you so much character growth. Like, it's basically a very rich place to be.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I would also add to that, like, it feels nostalgic to me as well. Maybe it's just because, like, I've read a lot of books in the past, like growing up, where there is a
Yeah.
school setting, and there's just something so familiar about reading that kind of setting. But that's really true that you do have all those dynamics. And when you do have something greater at stake, it does take the characters away from the school to focus on that main plot. So yeah, those are really good points, and I can definitely see that. Like when I read Star Academy series, that was definitely the case. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
awesome. And then I also want to know, when you started out writing Star Academy, which is a sci-fi, and then you
Right. Yeah.
wrote Elmwick, which is more paranormal fantasy. What was that transition like? Was it a hard transition, or like tell us a little bit about
Um,
that?
Honestly, writing Elmwick after Star Academy, especially after the third Star Academy book, because it had been giving me headaches for like 3 years, and I basically had to rewrite, as I mentioned, book one and two in order to make book three even make sense. So it was so hard to put all the different, players and places, everything in place to a satisfying conclusion was just so, so hard that, uh, Elmick, writing newcomer with, the little sweet main character arriving new to school, in the middle of the semester. It just felt like so cute and so cozy. And I just had a blast. I wrote the first two books, I think not even like they're published in the same year. I wrote them very close together. And I think I only took like 4 months to write Heritage.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it went much faster for me for sure. There are downsides to that. I think I burnt out a little at the
Mm.
end, but for me, it was definitely easier to establish this world and to establish these characters compared to the sci-fi. Like the sci-fi required a lot more like forethought on my end, a lot more planning, a lot more like world building as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would imagine it would be the kind of a similar experience for me. I haven't written anything that's like true sci-fi yet, but I am also honestly a little intimidated by it because of like the research and the brainstorming and the world building. There's like I feel like there's going to be a lot of more thought you need to put into it. Whereas the fantasy, it's like small town eerie vibes,
Yeah.
magic creatures, and that just sounds really cozy and fun.
Yeah, exactly. I think I just needed a little bit of a break. I needed the shifting gears. And it was really welcome to do Elmwick Academy. That being said, after I did 3 books of urban fantasy, I now want to switch gears again. And
Ah,
now I'm
yeah.
going into YA dystopian. So,
Mm.
kind of back into the sci-fi-ish side, but it is a softer sci-fi whenever it's dystopian, you know that, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely. That would not be as intimidating as like a true sci-fi.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. So you did come out with an anthology recently. Were you in a
Mhm.
collaboration with other authors and you
Yes.
released that? So can you tell us a little bit about that? Oh, perfect. It's right there. So what is it called? Love and Other
Yeah, it's called Love
Dangers?
and Other Dangers because, of course, love is very dangerous, right? Especially in dystopian societies, usually is very dangerous. And yeah, I wrote a story. It's a short story of about 11,000 words that I submitted to become a part of this anthology. And I was accepted into it with a bunch of other awesome authors, which was really exciting. It came out earlier, a couple months earlier. So yeah, the end of, I was going to say earlier this year, but no, it was not this year. It was last year. Yeah, still getting used to that. And this story, basically the short story that I wrote for it, is a prequel to my new YA dystopian series.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah, so it takes place roughly 20, 25 years before the events of book one, which I'm drafting now. And yeah, it was really fun to write. I actually wrote the story in just like 10 days or a week or so, because I learned about the anthology like very late into the
Mm,
process. So I had like very little time to the deadline. But because I have been working for a while on the YA dystopian, the world was already built. I already knew a lot of the things that are going to happen even in later books. So there was a lot like that had been plotted out, and mostly the world building was in place. So I was able to write that out quite quickly, just because I knew kind of where everything is supposed to be, and yeah, how everything is supposed to work out. So yeah, it was actually really fun to write. And I'm even more pumped about my new series now that I have something from it, like a piece of it, out into the world.
wow, that's so exciting. And I can't wait to check out this dystopian series you're going to be coming out
Yeah.
with. So we'll go into that in just a minute. So to start wrapping up the conversation just a little bit, I first would like to know, looking back on everything you've been through in your writing journey, what is one piece of advice you would tell your younger self?
Mhm. Honestly, for me, and this will be advice just for myself, like I think a lot of people will probably find it useful themselves as well. But definitely the most important thing that I would tell myself just for my own journey is to preserve that kind of love and enjoyment from writing and to keep it as a hobby in the sense of, yes, it might be making money. Yes, you might be doing professional edits, you might be doing professional covers, you might be doing advertising and everything. But I really think that, to me, what clipped my wings a lot was like this phrase of like, oh, you have to start treating it as a business, because that just like sucked the joy out of it, just calling it a business. Like it can still be a business, but in my mind it has to be my biggest joy. It has to be what I do when I have free time because I love it, and I don't want to lose that. And I'm sad to say that at some point I did lose it, especially around the last Elmwick Academy book. I was pretty stressed with how the series is doing in terms of marketing and advertising and so on. And yeah, it just really took away focus from what I love doing. And that's why it was so nice to actually speak to you today about my early days of Wattpad and, remember how it used to be. Remember that on Saturdays I would wake up and just want to write because I finally had time to do it.
Yeah, yeah, that was what I was thinking when you were talking about your Wattpad journey. Is just you focus so much on the enjoyment of writing, and that is like a huge thing that is so important
Yes.
when you're going through this author journey, especially when you're publishing. Is just not lose that focus of your enjoyment for something that started out as a hobby. So I
Yeah,
totally agree with
exactly.
that.
So basically, my advice is keep it as a hobby. At least in your mind, in some space, in a little box of the way you treat it and the way you think about it. Like think of it as a hobby, think of it as enjoyment, because that's what it should be.
I love that. I love that. All right, let's get into some rapid fire questions. All right.
Woo!
So, what is your favorite trope?
Found family, yes,
Love
absolutely. It
it.
is my favorite, and I have it in all of my books, and I just love those group dynamics. I think reading and writing would not be the same without found family. Absolutely.
I love that trope. So good. And what is your favorite writing snack?
Chocolate chip cookies.
Ah, I was craving that last night. I think I might make some tonight.
Oh,
So
nice.
good.
Well, I usually buy them. I'm not much of a baker, but yeah,
Oh,
they're
well,
great.
buying them for the store, that's also good too.
Yeah.
Favorite book currently?
I'm just gonna tell you the best book I read last year,
Okay.
because I have so many favorites I can't choose. But the best book I read last year was Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman, and it's part of the Arc of a Scythe
Oh, yes,
series.
yes. I was like, that sounds so familiar. That's such a good book. Oh my
It is
gosh.
an amazing book, and I mean, having read my books, you know that I like big twists. But that series, that especially that second book, has the biggest twist that I had not seen at all in many, many years, and it just blew my mind. And I love it
Yeah.
when a book does that.
Yeah, same here. It totally blew my mind. Such a good series, such a great book. And then what are you working on currently?
Yay! I'm working on the YA dystopian and on a Star Academy novella, which
Oh, fun.
basically bridges the end of the Star Academy series with the Star Academy spin-off series that I have planned,
Ooh,
where the
fun.
children of the main characters are in Star Academy and solving their own mystery.
That's so exciting. I can't wait for that. Wow. Can't
Yay!
wait. And where can readers find you?
The best place to find me is probably on Instagram. I'm fairly regularly putting out some stories, though I have some plans to share a bit more of my writing journey in my stories from now on. So that was probably the best place to find me, and as well my newsletter. So if they just go to emiliazeeland.com, they can subscribe to hear from about my new series and to get a lot of like fun bonuses for my existing series. So that's another place, and I do try to respond to every email on the newsletter as well. So that's another good place to find me.
All right, perfect. And we will have all the links to your social media, newsletter, website, and also where readers can find your books in the show notes or if you're on YouTube in the description below. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I had such a blast talking to you about your books and your writing journey. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Julie, for having me. It was amazing, and I really can't wait to see where the rest of the episodes will take this podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I can't wait. All right. Have a great day.
Thank you, you too. Bye.
Bye.